Hello, everybody. Welcome to Polar Currency and Talking Money number 7. This one is actually a pretty special episode. It kind of scares me a little bit because with me today, I have Arthur Friedberg, Art Friedberg. You
How you
know
doing?
him from the Paper Money book. Welcome, Arthur, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for
Good to be
being
here.
on here. Sincerely. There, I'm just talking over the icon like an idiot, but I'm a little nervous. I'll admit that. With me joining as Chief Publishing Officer for Whitman Publishing. Again, just a little bit of a big deal. I mean, I'll admit, Patrick Ian Perez. Now, Patrick, is it Patrick Ian? What, I mean, is there a hyphen in there? I'm kind of making fun of you. What do you want me to call you?
No, Patrick is fine.
All right.
The Ian is my middle name, but in my byline or in any kind of professional
Right.
sense, I put it there just because I like it. But
It
Patrick is
looks good. It matches your hair, which I don't have. So I'm kind of jealous of that. All right, Patrick, it is. But Patrick, yeah, I mean, when I first, how I got here is the biggest question to me. So it's John
Feigenbaum.
Feigenbaum. Okay, so I do a video and I did on the obsolete banknotes. He made a nice comment. I sat there and looked at the comment. I'm like, well, what the hell? I'm going to ask and see if he wants to come on. He begged off because he's not a currency guy, and it was originally Patrick and was there to begin with. So thank you for that commitment, Patrick. I
For
appreciate
sure.
it. And then he's like, well, I'll fill in with this guy called Art Friedberg. I'm like, yeah, he might just be good enough. So that's kind of scary. But to give you the backgrounds on these guys, so Arthur L. Friedberg, co-author of Books of Paper Money of the United States and Gold Coins of the World, expert in U.S. paper money and world gold coins, served as pricing analysis for Coin World's Paper Money Retail Guide for federally issued paper money for over 20 years, pricing analyst for Euro values, covering retail prices for Euro coins issued by 21 nations since 2002. Provides Euro market analysis for updates published in World Coins. And this is kind of an interesting one because this is a rare first. He was the first American ever elected president of the International Association of Professional Numismatists in 2001. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, thanks,
Oh,
but not really.
okay. You could turn the camera and show the plaque on the wall, but I'm not going to make you do that either. So again, little dumbfounding, and we of course, you know, Art, the big thing that I like to compliment the book on, and credit Whitman for having the smarts to buy it and now publish it. I mean, everybody knows this book, and if you talk to many paper money collectors, you and your brother, this is the Bible.
Well, appreciate
If
that.
I said only buy one book, and I guarantee you, this is what all of us say, it's that book. It's
Oh,
that good.
thank you.
So thank you for doing that for the collector community, and we're going to get back into how that started. But now it's Patrick's turn to go through his ticker tape.
Yeah,
All right, Patrick.
much shorter and less accomplished for sure.
Well, you know what? You look like you're 22. I know you're not, but I'm just giving you crap because
My
I'm a
birthday was this past Thursday, believe it or not.
really I had
And
my
he spent it in the best way possible at a coin show.
at a coin show.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, correct, at Long Beach, yeah.
So Patrick is currently Chief Publishing Officer for Whitman Publishing. That just happened last October, my understanding. Congratulations. That's
Thank
that's
you.
that's big. That's
Thank you.
really this is the most important thing to me based in your position that's on your bio. Former retail brick and mortar coin shop owner in Southern California, being that day to day, owning it, putting your money where your mouth is, and you're living off it. To me, that means a lot. Um,
Yeah, I mean
what you're doing.
the real world experience of dealing with customers and seeing, the whole gamut of things out there from dateless Buffalo nickels and proof sets to slabbed coins and currency and foreign exchange was such an amazing education.
Are you glad you don't have the shop today with what Silver's doing?
No, I miss it.
You miss that. That's
The
the
action.
game. All right.
Yeah, I
Nice.
love the action.
Former editor of Coin Dealer Newsletter, past executive director of the Numismatic Literary Guild. Since 2023, has served as chair of the National Coin and Bullion Association, author of modern Chinese money, 1949 to present, which is wow. I mean, talk about I can't call it a niche, but that is a big subject.
Yeah, and that was done, before with major help from Owen Linsmeyer, who you
Yeah.
mentioned, who you've spoken with before. But it was at a time when that market was just appreciating so rapidly, and there was no real good pricing guide for English speakers out there. So we're like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. It's a small book, little handbook, and it was a really fun project because at that time, CDN had we had never done a book before.
Nice.
So
Host of Gray Sheets podcast that you can stream on Spotify or watch on their YouTube channel. And in addition to United States coins, Arthur, I got to ask you this point too, but so that your numismatic interests, I got to talk about that name at this point in this interview. Just numismatist. At least we're not philatelists, but it still is bad. Include world paper money, world coins with an emphasis on Mexico and Germany, obviously China, and numismatic literature. So that's a lot. That's a lot for both of you gentlemen. And so I'm kind of sitting here going, why make this little YouTube channel? Wow. But we're getting there. So, all right, let's talk about US paper money.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
we were pre-talking and you told me the story of how that book got started. And I think that story is fascinating on how your father started the book.
Well, I was 3 years old at the time, so this is not exactly firsthand information. But until the early 1950s, it was illegal to reproduce images of United States paper money. I mean, if you look at probably one of the greatest auction catalogs of all time, it's the Grinnell collection, which was sold in a series of auctions at the end of the Second World War. And it was a fabulous collection, and there are no images in it at all. And because it was not allowed to
Right?
reproduce US currency. And there are good arguments for that, mainly counterfeiting.
Mhm.
And so my dad somehow decided that there was a need for a book that would go past the ones that were out there that would actually illustrate them. So somehow, and I don't know how, he got permission from the Secretary of the Treasury to do a book with illustrations of currency in black and white, with the proviso that they could only be less 75% or less or 150% or more of actual size. And that has stuck
That's
to
never
this day.
changed. That's the
Yeah.
law today. That's
And
impressive. That I mean,
yeah,
to get that done with the bureaucracy of the Treasury
yeah,
Department.
I don't know how he did it, but somehow he did. And slowly, the first book was very thin with not a whole lot of images, and that gradually expanded. And I'll tell you an interesting story that I'll never forget. I was 7 years old at the time, and it was that he always took the train from New York, where he worked, to our home, which at that time was in Rutherford, New Jersey, and that was a 5 block walk from the train station. And so one day he walks in the door and he comes down, puts some stuff on the kitchen table, and says, "Come here, I want you to take a look at this." So we go and we take a look at this, and it was a small size $10,000 bill and a small size $5,000 bill. I said, "Dad, what's that?" He says, "Well, these are the highest denominations." He probably didn't use the word denominations because at 7 years old I wouldn't have understood.
Right.
These are the highest value notes that the United States ever produced. And because I'm putting them in the next book, the Federal Reserve Bank gave me permission to take these home with me, to
Wow.
have them photographed, but I have to return them tomorrow. So take a look at these now. And I will never forget that because you can't imagine something like that would ever happen today.
No.
No.
No, just here you go. Especially the
Yeah.
5,000. Those seems to be
5,000 are rarer than 10,000s, but
yeah. I mean, that's
yeah.
amazing that he's toting those home on the train,
Yeah,
walking the five
came home on the
blocks
train,
in
just walked
Rutherford,
down
New
the street.
Jersey.
It had these. Yeah, of course, they weren't worth much more than that at the time.
Right. I mean,
But
that's
I mean, $10,000 in 1957 was still
a lot of
$10,000 in
money.
1957. Yeah.
Right. Right.
But it wasn't, I mean, they only sold, if you would sell them at those times, they were only like a few $1,000s over that.
So, yeah, so he gets that done, publishes the book for what, another 10 years or so,
Yeah, yeah, he passed in 1963.
63, which I'm sure was not planned. Nobody's death is really planned, but it certainly wasn't. That's early. That's very early.
Yeah, he was 50 years old,
Yeah.
and
So,
that was young.
were
And
at that time were you, I mean, you and your brother, co-author Ira, were you guys into or just typical
no,
teenagers here
not
and there,
really. I mean, no,
maybe?
no,
That's
not
what
at all.
dad does.
I mean,
He's
I had no anticipation at that time of going into this business, and it was only after later when I was a teenager and I started working in the business that I actually said, "Yeah, I kind of like this." So that's why we decided to go into it, and
I mean,
it's
so
fortunate that we were able to.
working in the business, what does that mean? I mean, putting the catalog together, this is
Well, it was more than
obviously,
just a catalog. I mean, I'll take it from your view. You're in Minnesota, right? You're in
yeah,
Minneapolis. You've heard then of the Dayton Hudson Company,
yes.
okay? And you remember there was a coin department in Dayton Hudson downtown on Nicollet Mall. We were the operators of that coin
Oh,
department.
come on, really?
Yeah. So, you know, it was more than just publishing. We were the operators of coin departments in over 30 department stores around the United States, Marshall Field, Gimbel's, um, Robinson's, and then Bullock out in California. And we did that until the very end of the 1970s when we saw with what the rent we had to pay to the department stores was and what the market was doing, that it was no longer a viable business. So we just
Juice
got
is
out
a
of it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's high
And
retail. That's a high retail space for a local coin
yeah, well,
dealer.
the rent, I mean, I'm not embarrassed. The rent was 20% of sales.
Yeah,
Okay. So it didn't matter if you sold $100 in a day, your rent was $20.
yeah.
If you sold $10,000 in a day, your rent was $2,000. So you had no fixed rent. It was a totally variable rent. And to us, at least, that's not a business model. And so we said, if we're going to lose our shirts, let's do it our own way and not their way.
True, true.
And getting out of them was the best thing we ever did.
Did it?
I, I, I
So were
think
you?
that I think the coin market suffered a little bit because we were the intro level coin dealer.
Well, you're in prestigious locations.
Yeah,
Easy to access. I'm already shopping. I'm bored. The wife is looking
yeah,
for XYZ.
yeah.
You know.
But and I think it took a long time, probably until the days of the internet, for the intro collector to find another easy way of entry into the market. Because you walk into most coin shops, you want to spend $10, no one wants to look at you.
So was that still under? Was that under the Institute's?
Yeah, well,
Um,
we had a separate company for that.
okay.
Obviously, we didn't want to mingle them,
Right, right, right. So
but it was all closely held companies. So
So the catalog continued on. You're, and again, I can't imagine losing my father at that age, and I'm sorry to hear that, but you obviously picked up his legacy.
you play with the
Um,
cards you're dealt.
yeah, I mean, there's not, yes. But so when did you come back and say, okay, when did you and your brother's name go on the book?
I came into the business after college, which would have been the early 70s. And I would say probably within 5 years after that, I started working on the books. Gold coins takes a lot longer to do than paper money. So I think gold coins was probably 6, 7 years before I got on the book. But the paper money book, I was on it pretty quickly.
So with the book itself, when I had either read or saw you speak, I saw a couple interviews that you've done. You made the comment of you didn't like it that the pictures went to color.
Well,
Um,
it's not that I didn't like it. It was great for business. It was a great way to make
okay.
money. But from the point of view of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing,
Ah,
they were not happy.
the
And from what I understand on hearsay, is that it was basically a political thing that was sort of shoved down them,
hmm.
the ability to print notes in color. I still say, from an anti-counterfeiting standpoint, it was dumb. The horse is out of the barn now, and that was long before we had Photoshop,
Yeah.
image programs, scanning, the internet. Today, it really doesn't make a difference.
All right.
But back in those days, I mean, I thought it was a terrible mistake.
What was the hardest thing for you and your brother to do publishing this book? I mean, it seems every 3 to 4 years that's when it was published, and I can understand that. What was the most difficult thing
About doing the book,
about publishing the book, getting it done?
I'll just refer to the days before things like Quark Express, InDesign, and Photoshop. Ev- Everything was done by hand.
Yeah.
You had to send out to have type made, then you had to have someone paste the type down, then you had to take the images and paste them in position, and then they all had to be scanned with the proper dot resolution. It was a monstrous job,
And then
very time consuming.
and
I mean, today, what I can do on a book today in 3 weeks would have taken 3 months in those
right.
days.
And one thing I do have to credit your father, or at least you guys did, when you follow the books. I mean, you kept to his format for the most part. I mean, there's been a lot of changes and additions, of course, but the basic format of ABC or 1 through 10 really did. It
Well,
works,
what do they say? If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
right? Which, by the way, I mean, that's a credit to you and your brother, to say, hey, we don't need to reinvent the wheel just to reinvent the
I mean,
wheel.
I'll tell you, one time I was sort of getting kind of bored of the format,
Hmm.
and I had a really expensive designer who did all our book covers for us. And I went to him and I said, let me spend more money. Can you redesign this book? And I left it with him for about 6 months. And when he came back to me, he said, you know what? I can't do it any differently. Just keep on, if you're going to stay 8.5 by 11, which for this book we want to keep on doing, there's no better way to do it. Now, when we got onto the additional stuff in the back of the book, we try to save space on those
Sure, sure. All
because
right.
they're not as well looked at.
I'm going to come back to you, Art. I'm going to switch over to Patrick for a little bit. So, Patrick, you are a younger guy in the business. And again, no offense to me or Art. But how did you get, how do you go from, I'm assuming you collected coins and getting into your coin shop, it was business. Tell me about how
No,
you got here.
well, the one thing that's been a common thread my whole life is I've collected everything you could possibly think of, from rocks when I was two, really, really heavy into baseball cards, stamps with my grandmother, and then just on and on. But coins, never had a concept of collecting coins. Don't have any coin collectors in my family. And I really got introduced to paper money by accident. I was buying stamps on one of those, where they mail you the little packets for
Yeah.
like 10 cents or 25 cents from some, I'm sure it's Mystic Stamps is who runs all this stuff. But I was I'm going to say seventh grade, and just out of nowhere, along with my monthly little packet of stamps, they sent me a pack of rolled paper money. And I looked through that and I was like, well, I'm never going to collect stamps again. And I was just hooked. And it was
I
a
mean,
combination,
isn't it
I've always
it's a
loved
bigger version
geography.
of, excuse me, I mean, it's a bigger stamp is what it is.
Exactly.
That it's just, I mean, it does say so much more.
Yeah, no, paper money, I've always said it actually. Paper money are just larger stamps, really.
Yeah.
And so I was just fascinated with that. I loved history, I loved geography, I really love maps, all that. And so rolled paper money is just this idea. And then the financial side of it and like learning about how money works and stuff like that. My dad's a controller, I was a CFO, and he used to bring home the Wall Street Journals, and I love looking at the little charts of all these different things. And so it all kind of just comes together in paper money.
Yeah.
Um, and then, when I collected sports cards, you learn to just carry the Beckett price guide with you everywhere. So I had that thing memorized when I was in fourth grade, fifth grade, whatever. And you learn condition is, important versus on price, and what are the better cards, what are not the better cards. So I'm like, okay, well, it must apply the same way to paper money. But I couldn't find a catalog. I couldn't find a price guide. And so this is like even before kind of the internet was just in its infant stages. And eventually, like late high school, I learned of this thing called the PIC catalog, or the standard catalog of rolled paper money. but you couldn't buy one. There's, I couldn't even find one for sale. So one day I went into old, if you recall the chain Borders books.
Yeah. Yes.
So I went into a Borders books and I went to like their like special orders department. I'm like, I'm looking for this book. Can you freaking find one for me? And like, oh yeah, it's a special order and it's this much and whatever. And there was 3 volumes. And I was like, well, I can only afford one. So I picked the general issues. And it took like a month and a half to arrive. And it finally came, it's as thick as a phone book. And once I started looking through that and the black and white pictures in that, that really, really hooked me.
To me, that seems like one of the last things that would be incentivize me because they're smaller pictures, they're black and white, and this is not a criticism of Krause and the massive. I mean that every book it's massive of what they have to do. I mean it's world, it's an ocean, but
Yeah.
that's
And
so
then,
that's what that really was what pushed you over the edge, seeing all those notes.
just seeing the possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's kind of funny. I never associated a coin shop with having paper money because I'm like, well, it's a coin shop.
right.
It's not paper. And then I finally went into it, started going into a couple, and I would see, cases with a little bit of paper money. And then then I went to my first show. Then I went to my first Long Beach show growing up in Southern California, and I saw dealers with like real inventory. And then it's just been fun ever since.
And those are, I mean, that's what's tough to me about the local coin shop. And I'm not expecting them to carry a lot. And Art, we were talking about the local coin dealer, and I get it. They're brick and mortar. They got to make money. So let's sell what you need to sell. But we're kind of a dry market here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Not a lot of local coin dealers in this market, which means there's
You
not a
need
lot of
Dayton Hudson.
right. Which, by the way, bought Marshall Fields for you Southern Midwest Chicago people. A lot of people don't know that. And by the way, Dayton Hudson was the parent company of Target Corporation, that thing that
Right.
people hear about. Anyways, but so to go around to the local coin dealers for me locally, once I was out of my $5 1934 silver certificate, there was no need. I mean, it just wasn't worth the time to do the drive. That's where
Exactly.
eBay really filled a big hole for me back in the day. I remember
Yes.
waiting for eBay to sell currency. They already were carrying coins. I remember the day that it went live. That was a big deal for all, I think, currency.
Huge deal. Huge deal. And then you learn about, and then again, you learn about eBay. And then you learn about auction companies that have, as websites got
Yeah.
better and better in the early 2000s. And I was just, it was so awesome just to be able to see the note. I don't even care about bidding or buying. Just to see pictures of all this stuff was the coolest thing in the world. And so that for me, that it shows the value of it really taught for me the value of like high quality reference materials, you know, things that have good quality images because unless you see the stuff, it's very difficult to get inspired.
And again, that's why I credit your dad, Art, by saying we need photos. Yeah, it's it's a big step and this and that. And I think going to color, yep, I get it. But at the time they went color, you could never reproduce it on a photocopy machine. There were still guys literally drawing currency that could fake it.
Yeah,
Um,
some of them are pretty pretty popular now too.
right. Um, So you got and it's funny that both obviously Whitman is first and foremost known for its U.S. you know collection of volumes, its books and things like that. Art, what you have done, you're married to the U.S. paper money name, but both of you are extremely into world other things, whether it be world gold, whether it be world banknotes. How did you guys get there? How did let's start with Art, go back to Art. How did you get to the world fascination of?
I've always liked world history better than American history.
Okay.
Even in college, my favorite courses were not American, it was world, ancient on through the medieval ages, specific countries. I think it's just more interesting. And when you get into the numismatic aspect of it, a lot of US coin collectors won't like me for saying it, but compared to world coins, US coins are pretty boring.
I, okay. I don't know. I like looking at 50 years of ceded liberties. I'm
Okay,
just saying, this is where I get sarcastic, a little bit bitter, but some coin folks give currency
yeah,
that it this or that.
I just thought there was always more fascination in the world coins, more artistry,
Yeah.
more history. And that's a lot of that is just a function of the fact that these countries have been around a lot longer than the mid 17th century. So
Well,
you're
it
going to have all that to draw on. And
certainly
there's
reflects
nothing, I mean, the first time anyone holds a Roman coin in their hand, there has to be some kind of feeling of awe when you look that a Roman silver denarius, which is a little coin about yay big, that was one day's wages for a Roman soldier.
and it's
And
2,000 years old.
yeah, and how has this been passed around? Who had this first? What was it used for? Where did it go? How did it get where it is now? And I just think that the historical part of coins is in that.
Patrick, follow your nod in your head. You're in agreement, of course. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but for me specifically with world paper, mine is a little bit more practical. I couldn't afford US paper. Large size notes are expensive.
Yep.
$1,000, $1,500, and I could find really, really cool rolled notes for $40 or $75. And so the budget that I had to spend in my early collecting life, I could get more for my money in world I mean, I honestly like the artistry. I've always specialized in Latin American, and a lot of that stuff was, as you know, was produced by American Banknote Company and their related firms, and they're just so beautiful. And you
Stunning.
just look at them, and they have this certain romanticism about them. Being from the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a lot of things going on in these countries. A lot, just like Art said, the history is very chaotic at times, and you see that in the notes. And I always just thought it's just a better value proposition.
And the thing that I'm always, I'm maybe I make too big of a deal of it, but everybody who collects, there is a value. I'm not, there's things I purchase that I don't care what I can resell it at. I'm never going to get my money back, and that's a big part of my collection. But things like US currency, large size notes, I want to make sure at least I can break even, or when I'm dead, my wife will. Um, and that's part of where, Whitman's comes in. Art, you got
I
something?
don't think anyone really ever buys something with the intent of losing money.
No.
Okay. They don't necessarily want to make a whole lot of money, but they never really want to lose.
But okay, I can't believe I'm going to counter Mr. Friedberg. But when you buy an obsolete or you buy a World Bank note and spend over $100, there's a good chance that you may not make that money back in a, I'll just say I'll leave it at may not make it back, depending. We all know it
That
depends.
depends on the state of the market at the time you're buying it.
Yes.
I mean, obsoletes, or I still call them broken banknotes. I know
Yeah,
that's
the same thing.
that's
Interchangeable.
taboo, but
Yep.
I still call them broken banknotes.
It is not
But
taboo. That's what
they
they were
got
called.
very overheated a while ago, and it's taken a real long time for them to approach this, I guess, a state of equilibrium.
Yeah. Well, that's like
And
national banknotes went
and
crazy.
that's because you had two guys fighting over it. And once one guy's not interested, that's when everything starts going down.
That's when it goes. I mean, we've seen prices, national banknotes, what, 2008, nine, prices went crazy. COVID drove pricing up in some areas, and actually national banknotes came down at that point. But it was strange with that. So, I mean, but Patrick, with world banknotes art too. I mean, you buy a note, you better want to really love it and collect it. And that's,
Well,
I
and
guess,
that's a great point. I mean, the what I may or may not be able to resell it for someday is never the first thing in my mind when I'm
right.
making a purchase, right? It's fifth, sixth, seventh. And
Yeah,
I'm admittedly lucky where I started before I was 20, and I'm not going to sell my collection until if I make it to 70 or
right.
80. So I don't care. The market's going to go where it's going to go.
And
And
I
that
think a
money's
lot of
gone
people,
anyways.
I think a lot of people that are buying world banknotes, broken banknotes, also understand that if we break even, great. If we don't, that's not why we're buying the note.
Yeah, but let me
Yeah.
tell you something. You will not hear of many longtime collectors who have ever lost on their collection.
Right,
Exactly.
long time. Yes.
Okay. the ones who lose on their collections are the ones who would call up their dealer. I remember this going back into the 70s and 80s, or the ones who would call their dealer every day saying, "What are my coins worth today?" Okay,
Yeah.
and you might not believe it happened. You'd get calls every day. "What are my coins worth?"
But
Sure.
this is what makes
The serious collector is always going to do okay
right.
because he knows to hang on.
Well, but I mean, even as a starter, a newbie, that's what makes this effective, as well as the other books that Whitman produces, is that it's a guide, right? They are guides, plus or minus, right? And I say plus or minus eye appeal, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have the same VF30 that's very different than another VF30, and they're worth different prices. But I think it lets people start and having a value, and that's where World Bank doesn't have that to the degree. And obsoletes. I mean, somebody made the comment that I think was hilarious that I was on with when they talk about Don Kelly's obsolete bank. You know, the people who were born the year he published it are now driving, and have those prices changed? Yes, they have. Some have, some haven't. But I think we just all want to pay. I want to make sure people are buying it for a fair price, not getting ripped off on eBay. That's my little mission in life, is try to get the best pricing information you can get. And
Yes.
I think auction houses like Stacks and Bowers, like Heritage, do a nice job of tracking down what just sold in the last 6 months. Let's hit on that. How do you guys, I mean, I hear sour things from normal day-to-day collectors on auction houses, and I am not one of them. I'm a defender of them. Uh,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I can definitely.
no,
So,
jump in,
as you
Patrick.
know, with CDN, we have the green sheet,
Yep.
but also known as the Currency Dealer Monthly, and it comes out every month. It's specifically wholesale pricing, so my primarily targeted at dealers, and I update that every single month using the most recent auction records of the prior 30 to 40 days, right? So that auction data is critical to everything that we do when
Hmm.
it comes to pricing, but it's not, number one, it's not the only thing. And you also have to have the ability to know how to interpret auction results. And that's a difficult thing to explain for someone who, again, like you mentioned, talking about having the dealer experience, being on both sides of a transaction, buyer and seller, and recognizing that if you have 10 notes of all the same Friedberg number and all the same grade, yes, they will trade in it within a range, but they're all not going to land on the same number.
No.
Why is that? And there's reasons. And so I apply that reasoning to when I do pricing for the green sheet. And this is also kind of a reason because we get asked often more on the coin side, hey, are you guys employing AI or, machine learning for pricing? And yes, you could probably get 75% of the way there, but you have to have the human nuance understanding of this niche market that we call numismatics to put a price on something. And again, it's one number, right? One number is impossible to represent all items in a given category or for that note and that grade, but using auction data gets you very, very close.
Well, and it lets me know that that FR number is going to be 30 to 40% more than this FR number. It gives me that idea. Oh, this one's more scarce, rare, whatever term you want to apply. That's why that's more than the other one. And
Yes.
speaking of, that's another credit that I've got to give to your father for starting that, the Friedberg numbering system. That's again, it's really weird talking to you, Art, because we throw FR and Friedberg number and we talk about it like it's like it's the weather. It's just weird. I don't talk to the weather. So
Well, as someone who loves cataloging, I mean, Art is the only guy who has his name attached to two different series, US paper and gold coins of the world. I mean, and it's used everywhere.
and so again, I will credit that both of you, everybody, for keeping that catalog system relevant and usable. That's not an easy task at all.
It's also interesting. Me and Art have had, I think, two of these in the past year where we decide, does this new note variety warrant a new Friedberg number?
Mm,
How do you make, what is that decision like? Because that's that's a big thing, right? It affects the value of the note. All the auction houses have to know about it. The grading services have to know about it to denote it correctly. And but beyond that, one thing that I always like to emphasize, and anytime have a chance to talk about it, is I think the average collector and definitely the average dealer doesn't quite understand the importance of having a catalog database, not just for paper money, but for every
Yeah.
numismatic item. And that's one of the things that we're trying to build at Whitman that was already started, John and I at CDN, is believe it or not, we were actually trying to catalog every numismatic item ever. Because that's the only way you're going to have a foundation that's good enough to provide the proper information.
Let's talk about Whitman. I mean, it's a name that's been around almost 100 years. I mean, it's an old name from the penny albums to whatever. It's a classic name, classic brand, synonymous with coin collecting and albums and things like that. So it's a great name. So it's a big deal to me. And you do it well. I mean, one of my favorite things, again, I mean, this is just the intro to the whole next 8 books, by the way. These aren't the biggest selling things. And I recognize that Whitman, as well as CDN being the parent company, you guys aren't making a ton of money off this. And it's appreciated because without these books, I love books. I mean, books are obviously my thing.
Often quoted, whoever it was, I forget the name now, buy the book before the coin.
Hmm. I say,
Oh,
yeah,
I think it was Yeoman who said that. But, you know, I think the biggest thing, because I'll tell you right now, we're only in our second, just over 2 years since the acquisition of Whitman. And when I say we, John, myself, John, the other leadership, we're shocked that we're in charge of Whitman, right? And not in a way that, in the sense of like, we have this very deep respect and appreciation for what the company was.
yeah,
And we also care very, very deeply about the hobby. Yes, is it a commercial enterprise and you have to make money? Of course.
of course.
I'll tell you, for me, as someone who kind of directs and decides what books we make and when, I'm always thinking about what is needed in the hobby. How can we serve the hobby best? How can we serve dealers best? How can we serve collectors best? Because at the end of the day, whether it's the gray sheet or whether it's a very niche book on, paper money errors, let's say, or the 1922 cent that we just did, how
Yeah.
do we help dealers sell more coins and how do we make collectors or help collectors buy more coins? That's that's the goal. And
Well,
currency.
and I think for the books that I've got, you've done them very well, obviously with authors such as the Friedbergs and Bowers and Sunman and all these folks, these icon names that know what the hell they're doing. And it's actually readable. I mean, there's some numismatic, and I'll say this, I mean, I love supporting the Society of Paper Money Collectors, but wow, some of those articles are just, wow, they're deep and dry.
Yes,
Um, and yet there's still good stories, but I can't get past the third paragraph. Um, because most of us don't care that deep. And Art,
exactly.
again, going back to the book where we talked about this a little bit, you said, I'm going to tell you what you need to know.
yeah. You don't tell the reader everything that you know or that you think you know or that you want to say. You tell them what they need to know. And in most cases, now those are, we're working right now on a new edition of the 100 greatest US currency.
Oh, thank you. That was one of my questions, so thank
Okay,
you.
well, no, here's your answer. And what Patrick and I are finding out is, you know what, basically, if you can't say it in less than 500 words, go back and say it again
Yeah.
because you're going to lose attention if you get much past that. And you're then going into things that you really don't need to tell.
And numismatists are the type of people that if they get exposed to something that's interesting, they're going to go seek out more information on their own.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and and all of our books have extensive bibliographies in the back, so there's no end to what someone can get into. But we don't need. We're just giving them the start. But if someone wants to go deeper, that's kind of the
Yeah.
fun of being a collector. We
But
don't need
that,
to deliver all of it.
But other than that, don't forget, the reader has an attention span too.
Yeah.
And
Let's talk about the newest. All right. So how's RQ Quarterly doing? How's Red Book Quarterly doing?
It's great. That's kind of our organ. That's our house organ that's dedicated to collectors. It was prior. It used to be called CPG, Collector's Price Guide Market Review. And then with the acquisition, we thought it'd be really cool to, because it was always retail prices, which obviously the Red Book is retail prices, but the Red Book, being an annual book, those prices expire very quickly, right? They don't cover the whole year. So we said, you know
Right.
what? Let's give collectors that additional information that kind of gaps the year between each Red Book. And so that's why we rebranded it. And I think it gives a really nice cohesive package for your U.S. coin collectors that say I buy my Red Book every year, and then I get my Red Book quarterly, every 3 months, and I have a full suite of pricing that I know is updated somewhat regularly. We're updating pricing every day, every week. Of course, once we print something, it's static,
Right.
of course.
I'd love to see star note pricing in there. Just FYI for small size.
Well, I
Just
should say
about it.
this actually. That's a good point. That's also. I was talking to someone about this at the show last week, where really in today's market or in today's numismatic scene in this country, that magazine you're holding there is really the only one that has regularly updated retail currency prices. Um, it's definitely something I would like to expand because I know that just out of space limitations, we've left a couple
Sure.
things out.
Right. I
But
mean, it's the first year. I mean, it's
yeah,
this thing. I always get my left right confused on camera, but um, it's a very nice magazine. It's got way too much coin information in it, which I don't care about. But that's okay. And yeah, I could say here's 10 things I wish that you do more for currency, and I hope you do. But
sure,
I'm gonna say cut you a lot of slack. It certainly is a good start. It's a nice magazine, nice print, nice advertising. Okay, it's green sheet pricing with a formula put on top to make it the retail, but it's all comes down to this, correct?
correct,
All right. And that's
correct.
fair. Trying to pinpoint a retail price as close to you can is probably give the dealer 30% over the green sheet. And
Yeah,
that's a fair price. Then it's up to you to negotiate from there.
exactly. But now we have this magazine that you can have at your table and be like, look, these numbers are directly related. These are mine, those are yours. And that's the way the market should work. There has to be a spread or else there's no dealers. So that's why we created it, and that's why um, it's so important for the wholesale numbers and the retail numbers to have a relationship.
So, I mean, we've got these, we've got this. You got to kind of get where I might go. Why do you need one, two, three, four, five? Why do you need five, Patrick?
It's all about what level of collector you want to be at.
Okay.
What is your, I'm not going to say your level of sophistication, but what is your level, what are your collecting goals is a good way to put it. What are
Okay.
your collecting goals? Are you doing a typeset? Are you trying to get every Friedberg number? Are you collecting by denomination? Are you focusing on large size? Are you focusing on small size? And I will say this, all the pricing in those items that you have picked that you just showed are related. They're
Sure.
all coming from the same database. So you're not going to see a note at 500 in one book and 1,000 in another book and 700 in another book. They're all going to be very close. And the book that the edition of Friedberg that you just showed is an older one too. So as we
Well,
produce,
yeah, this is the
it's
newest one
current.
that's current, but it's already 2 years old.
2 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's okay. I think currency guys are a lot more forgiving. And thank the Friedbergs for that, for training us that these books only come out. They don't need to come out annually. They just need to come out on a semi-regular basis. But
Any price guide is a snapshot in time,
yeah.
yeah.
and that's what you have to take it for.
And so art are, what's the process to going into changing the pricing for paper money of the United States?
You seriously review the prices. We don't pull it out of air. We use the CDN database. A lot of it is checking auction catalogs or auction sales and pricing it based off of that. Now, for a rare note, you put a lot more reliance on what the actual auction price realized was.
Sure.
For a fungible note, that being one, a very fine black eagle, you have to set different parameters because, most of those are not being sold at auction. If they are, they're going to dealers in bulk. So you have to allow more room for a retail margin on those.
With that said, I mean, that's one thing that I emphasize when, I'm talking to newer collectors is like, okay, you guys are looking at these pricing guides. Remember, they don't talk about if that note is graded, because would you pay more for a note if it was graded or raw? Or like you said, it's going to have annotation on it. It's going to say, minor repairs, pinhole. The books, the guides are not going to allow for that. And that's a big range. It's a big range. So again, emphasizing the guide. So I have to ask, rumor mill, and I think it's been confirmed that you, do I say, is it CDN? Is that who I want to say, or is Whitman? Who am I? When you purchased, you purchased Track and Price,
Just the world section.
just the world section. Okay, that's been the question.
Yeah, we've never done anything on the US side there. Yeah.
Oh.
And
Go ahead. Everybody's asking if you're gonna. So I might as well ask.
there hasn't I can say that there has not been any discussion on that front for quite a long time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean that is valuable to a lot of folks. But that's only again one slice of the pie. It's another tool. I think it's used more as a population database than really the value of it.
Yeah, so Track and Price US has kind of two components, right? They have the APR auction price lookup and then the census lookup. And I know the census lookup has been used for a very, very long time. And it's widely cited even still today in auction catalogs and things like that. I can say that we have kind of our own, when it comes to United States paper money, our database does contain auction records from Heritage, Stacks, Linnite, going back to 2008. So if you're a subscriber, you can look that up on the app, you can look that up on the website. If a dealer has CDN Exchange, all the auction, we have all those auction records there. But we don't have like dedicated census data by serial number, those types of things that Track and Price has.
Right. But I mean, and so that is helpful. So Art, when it comes to, I'm assuming do places like Track and Price come back into pricings for US
Oh, of course. Track and Price in many ways, it's really one-stop shopping. Could you live without it? Sure. Then you have to go to Heritage, you have to go to Lynn, you have to go to Stack Spowers. Track and Price gives you everything all at once.
What's the state of the currency and the marketplace?
I think so far, we had a really, really strong bull run, US 2020 or end of 20, all of 21, all of 22, a good chunk of 23. It's definitely leveled off. Last quarter of last year, and so far what I've been seeing the first month and a half of this year, really, I think buyers are very, very picky, especially for notes that are above, let's say, $10,000. If a note has any problem whatsoever, it's selling for way, way under, way under, no matter how rare the note is. Collectors have been conditioned, and I don't know if it's because, I don't know if they've been conditioned by dealers or what they've been told or whatever their perceptions are. We see the same thing in coins. Yeah, and if a note has any one single thing wrong, don't touch it, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I believe that collectors have been conditioned in this way in a certain segment. I'm still amazed at the popularity of $5 Chiefs and $10 Bisons. I mean, they just are still just, I mean,
it's unreal.
It's unreal. But everything else is pretty quiet.
And yet some really rare notes like California National Gold banknotes should be selling for far more than they are.
Yes.
But the reason they're not is because they're always in rotten condition.
And then if I could just touch on World real fast.
Yeah, World, because this is, I can't explain the world market. It's too big and I'm not knowledgeable enough.
No, of course, and it is different depending on where you're at in the world, of course, right? But here domestically, the market had such tremendous growth, both in pricing or in values and in the amount of collectors, and I think that's leveled off now. But I think also we have almost kind of too much market saturation with the auction companies, with the amount of sales that they have of world paper. Because before it was kind of an event for a world paper money auction to happen, because there wasn't that many of them. Now that's 15 years ago, but now all the major auction companies have sales weekly, if not monthly, or monthly, if not weekly. And it's a lot. And I think it's too much for the market to absorb. And so, of course, things start falling through the cracks. And then people start citing, oh, well, this note only sold for this at this auction. So that becomes the new number, even though it's not the new number. And
And
so
is that deemed as unhealthy market then,
I
even though
think
it's
so.
not?
Yes. I just think there's a lot, and there's not that amount of collectors in this country that they're able to watch every auction all the time and buy what they want. Unlike with coins, there's enough dealers that absorb all this material that's coming all the time. So I don't think kind of should take that back. I don't think the market's necessarily unhealthy. I just think there's too much supply.
Right. Which doesn't mean it's unhealthy.
Right.
Correct. Okay. I mean, it's just one of those things where I look at, I wish I could talk to Art about gold, but I have no knowledge about it. But I'm going to say, hey, you wrote a whole book on it. Give me a 30-second elevator speech why I should be interested in your book of world gold.
Because right now you can buy for close to bullion value coins that are really, really rare. And a lot of coins that are really rare are going to be melted down. And
That
those
kills
that
me.
remain are going to be rarer.
That is
Okay.
sad, but it is
I
reality.
don't know how long this is going to last. I mean, I don't think anyone who tells you they know what's going to happen is probably lying to you.
Mhm.
But the funny thing is, rare gold coins are doing as well as they ever had. There's no limit. There's a lot of money behind it, a lot of money going into it. The funny thing is, certain coins you'd think that 8 escudos from Mexico, from Peru, are worth a lot of money, and they are so common that basically they're worth their melt value now. And these are not modern issues. These are coins that are 300, 400 years old.
Wow.
It's,
I mean, and
it's scary. And they're finding more treasures, and they're basically finding melt at this point.
that's
It's pretty frightening.
that's tragic, but you understand it, but it doesn't mean make it any less
So
tragic.
there will have to be some sense of equilibrium sooner or later. I just don't know when.
Interesting. All right. Well, wouldn't be me if I didn't ask, especially with Art here and Patrick with Wit. I'm sure you're aware of. All right, it's 2026, and on the Bureau of Engraving, we're switching gears a little bit here to get a little closer to home. Art, we had a pre-talk on it, and I said I want to be respectful. I want to be nice. And one thing, whenever I talk the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, I am never, ever, ever, ever criticizing the artistry that goes into the making of our banknotes and those engravers and the skill for what they have.
Oh,
So
they're great.
let's start with that. It's what they have to deal with. The bureaucratic red tape of, well, it's no tape of the lack of world banknotes. This is where, Patrick, I'm glad I got you on. And it's not like Art, you're not familiar. All right. Any guesses, Art, of what we're going to see if they do, in fact, put out a new $10 bill for 2026 that
Well,
their
there's supposed
websites
to
do?
be one this year. Basically, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing seems to be under witness protection. Okay. You can't get a word out of them. When you ask them a question, I mean, you can ask them and they will tell you that they're busy fulfilling their main requirement, which is satisfying the Federal Reserve's print order for the year.
Okay, great.
And that's what they're supposed to do. Everything else is secondary to that. If anyone thinks that there's going to be a Harriet Tubman on a 20 right now, or that the $10 bill is, which I just had a note, I forget exactly, promise a $10 bill with Give me a second. Image of the March for Suffrage in Washington and the ladies of the suffrage movement. Anyone who thinks they're going to see that on a $10 bill, you're probably dreaming.
I don't
I
know
think
why.
one reason you haven't heard anything from them is that they're busy redesigning the redesign. And you're probably going to see
Let's
something.
make sure we all heard that. Redesigning the redesign. Okay.
Yeah. Because basically what they've had to do is security elements come first. And
Sure.
so they built all these security elements into a note, and then they designed a note around that. If parties who make the decision on what the design of US currency is, and that is strictly the Secretary of the Treasury.
No
No one else.
laws need to be passed to change
Now, the
currency.
only law passed about US currency is they are not allowed to redesign the $1 note.
Correct.
Okay.
Because of the
Other than
vending
that,
machine
it is
industry.
strictly the Secretary of the Treasury's responsibility. He can do whatever he wants. If you think that it's going to be what Secretary Lew promised in 2016, I guess it was 10 years ago, you're dreaming. It's not going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I mean,
And
I
think you'll
guess
see just a revision of the same note that we already have, just like the $100 bill has been several revisions of Benjamin Franklin. Nothing wrong with it, but it certainly doesn't reflect the entirety of the history of America.
well, and with that said, so I would agree if I was to predict, and it's not much of a prediction, is that okay, the new currency, which is scheduled on a 9-year rollout to get to, and the $10 supposed to be this year, is you're going to still see the same portraits, you're going to see the same buildings.
That's my guess.
Yep, nothing new. Not going to put anything on like the Marine statue for Iwo Jima or Mount Rushmore.
I hope someone will come to me and say, you were really wrong and you were really stupid. And I'd be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Not calling you wrong and stupid. I'm agreeing with
You
you.
call me wrong. That's fine.
That'd be
People have
fun to
done
call
worse.
Art Friedberg wrong and stupid, but I don't think I'll ever get that chance. So I mean, and again, it drives me crazy because I mean, what rubs it in is the commemorative notes. They never will do a commemorative. The
Well, they did
closest
do a commemorative note. They did a $2 commemorative note in 1976,
You know
except
what?
they didn't call it that.
They didn't, and I actually have a letter that was written said that this is not a commemorative note because it will be reissued again. From somebody, I don't know. I did a video on it, but it doesn't matter because big shocker, you're going to run out of $2 in 1976, really, and not be a commemorative? Come
No,
on.
it was a commemorative.
It was a commemorative
That's the way it is.
that they kept making.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I guess for me, the most surprising thing is the lack of creativity in the use of materials. You know, nowadays there's so many interesting substrates out there, whether you're talking polymer or polymer hybrid, that we haven't gone to that just from a cost savings point of view because they last so much longer in circulation and they're obviously much more difficult to counterfeit. So I'm really surprised that they've resisted any type of materials, technology advancement. And then it's funny you mentioned commemorative because that was the other thing that I always think about is why have we never done a commemorative, like 1 year single commemorative note, whether it's a 20, a 10, whatever it is, whatever you would think the semi Q would be a good chance to do that. Just produce it for 1 year, say we're going to make, whatever 100 million of them or 50 million, whatever the number is. I just don't understand why we've never been able to
I
do
think their heads would explode.
And this is our art. We talked about this, and I just couldn't get. I believe you, but I don't understand because their evil cousins over at the U.S. Mint do this every day, every year for coins.
Different authorities, different legislation, different legal status.
Yeah.
I will say I was told by someone at the Bureau many years ago that they were dead set on continuing the cotton linen 75-25. They swear by it. I wouldn't be surprised knowing that Crane makes substrates for lots of other countries that in one of the redesigns, we might not see clear windows in the cotton linen paper.
Well, Bermuda does it. Switzerland, one of the most secure banknotes that is made is cotton linen and it has a clear window in it. So it can be done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, you can talk all day about the interwoven security strip, which is kind of cool, and they've got the 3D effect. You know, Aruba's got the best one I've ever seen out there as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's like Patrick, you said, there's so many components that, by the way, are much more effective anti-counterfeit deterrents that are when you said, you know, that they're not gonna they trust it and I get the look and feel and they think that we're idiots that as American public that we can't handle a redesign that's something different. Well, I guess the people from 1862 to 1928 were a lot smarter than we were because
Yeah, they were able to figure it out, weren't they?
they
Yeah.
figured out how to deal with six different types and colors and people and vignettes and designs.
Oh yeah.
But man, we got dumb in 1928 because we can only have one design from now on out.
Yeah.
Um,
And they will tell you the reason for that is because the United States currency is so universally accepted that you have to make it easily recognizable to all. I don't know if I believe that or not.
I don't care. I'm not here to make currency for the rest of the world. I'm here to I mean, and for me, I'm sorry, I'm going off on my soapbox, but you know, this is our currency is the last vestige. I mean, sorry, coins. When's the last time you really used coins in commerce? Currency is down like 60%. You know, it went up a little bit, but now it's gone back down post-COVID.
Right.
Um, it represents our country, and we've got, you know, like the $1 and $2 bill that we can allow legislation as public to not have that redesigned because the vending machine industry didn't want it to happen because they didn't want their scanners updated. And by the way, now
When was
when's
the
the
last
last
time you
time?
used when was the last time you used a bill in a vending machine?
Yeah.
And they
Right.
all take credit cards now, right? You tap the damn thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress on that, but the irony is really, and I just think that it's a way to represent our country, whatever side of the fence you're on.
Certainly.
It's there's so many better ways, and not to say that what's happened bad. The colorized series is actually okay in design, and when it first came out, I mean, it's almost 20 years old.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's old now, but it was cool
Yeah.
at the time.
Mexico, they make their own banknotes. They do a wonderful job of it.
Yes.
Beautiful notes. So I digress. All right. I think I've covered everything that I can. I'm trying to keep to my time and your time, which I sincerely value and thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
gentlemen. Is there anything else that you would like to say or
Just it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. And you know, thanks for what you do. You know, currency collecting is such a cool thing. And I think there's plenty of room to grow still. So I'm
Well,
excited for the future.
I appreciate again Art for you and your brother and your family and what they've done for currency collection. Thank you for making it easier for everybody, including Whitman and CDN going forward, being able to produce books that are similar to that. I think it's just it's simple in whatever genre that happens. I would hope that they look at that. And Patrick, congratulations! But again, I know it's belated back in October, but that's a pretty big promotion,
No,
my
thank you.
friend, to Chief Publishing Officer. And I love it that you guys are reaching out to the community and engaging with us. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for both of you
Absolutely.
being here today.
Wonderful.
With that, we'll sign off.